Are there stereotypes about making love with a trans woman? I'm here with Olivia Cutie, and I'm Kathy Bartoli from theintimacydojo.com. And if you want to know more about Olivia, you can go to at miss_trans_cutie, and that link is below, as is Olivia Cutie 18 plus. So, Olivia, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what are some of the stereotypes people have about making love with a trans woman?
I think a lot of it is all about the dick, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
We're thinking like big, huge, creamy Elmer's glue loads all over someone's face. I think there's a big preconception that, we're able to talk all the time and such like that and such. I think that there's a very set image of of how a trans woman is often represented in media concerning our sexuality and such like that.
Yeah, and you're going to be speaking about making love to a trans woman at ConvergeCon. So I would imagine people might have, for some people the only representation might be they've seen porn. So
yes,
which is not really showing humans as humans always.
Certainly. Yeah, that's for sure. And I think it's oftentimes one of the only mediums that people will often see us in a. Actually, let me think about this a second here.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's see. This is one of the mediums that's okay. That's report. Okay, perfect. So yeah, as far as people's exposure to trans people, it can often be through porn is one of the most common ways. People find it, they come across it, and they may feel partial to it and such like that. I think people are curious, and what is often the case is that a lot of the times we are only familiar with what we're presented with, right? Particularly if we haven't been intimate with a person such as myself or another trans person. We oftentimes we might have some preconceptions going into that experience, and may not quite know how to ask with as to what could be the best way to achieve something for both partners that can really work. I think that it's oftentimes a more complicated thing than it looks in porn, to be honest. I think one of the things that's really missed is that when you're intimate with a person, you're having to take into consideration their thoughts, their feelings about stuff, like anybody else, we have hang-ups.
It's much more complex than porn, where the pizza delivery guy shows up and says, and he strips off his clothes. I've never had that happen. I don't know why, but
yeah, totally. And I think what we're really aiming to do with this workshop is that we're hoping to show from our perspective, myself and Miss Haley Hartless. We are wanting to show from the experiences that we've had, either being that person in that situation, of hooking up with someone that has been cis, or again, both of ourselves have been intimate with other people who are trans as well, and just perhaps giving a little bit of guidance as to the sort of things you might come across in that situation.
Yeah. I love that you're normalizing this, because I think the average human has trouble connecting with another human. It's just challenging. And then if there's myths and preconceptions and fears because of what is this body and how do I do a good job? It's hard enough when we think we know what we're supposed to do, and then if we have all these other stories in our head, it could be challenging. So I love that you're talking so openly about it and sharing for people to be able to feel more comfortable with each other.
Oh, well, thank you. You know what? And I think much of this comes down to communication, like sex with anybody else. To be perfectly honest, it's a very universal human, human trait that's common whenever we're intimate with someone. I think people have always been curious about what it's like to have sex with a person who's trans or gender non-conforming or non-binary. That's existed for a long time, but with the public consciousness being much more aware of transgender people and the language involved in it now, it's kind of just how can we then help people understand? How can we then apply these ideas to these people and perhaps ease anxieties and make it good for both, to be honest, because at the end of the day, that's really what you're looking for, right?
It really is.
It's supposed to be fun. So
I appreciate your generosity and your being willing to be vulnerable and share. Like it's hard to sit. I know the first conference I did, I talked about size, and I went up and I was having it felt very vulnerable to share. Like, I'm a big person and I still like sex, and even though I don't look like what's on the media, and I don't have your lived experience at all, I'm not claiming that, but the vulnerability of being able to share, like, hey, this is who I am and this is what I'm experiencing.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the things is that there's a lot of in many ways, I find that a common thing I come across with people is that a lot of their own perhaps hold-ups with, say, being intimate with a person that is not is not society's ideal, that is constantly pushed at people. They themselves are oftentimes in conflict with people telling them that, hey, this is not okay, rather than them being honest with themselves and saying, like, hey, this is something I enjoy and something there's honestly nothing wrong with it.
There isn't.
There's really not. It's just,
sadly, media keeps telling us you're either hypersexualized because you match what looks like on media, or you're desexualized because you don't match. As opposed to, we get to be humans, and I have days when I feel sexy, and then there's days I don't, and we just get to be ourselves.
Yes.
So.
Like any other night, I'd be just like sitting here in my PJs, to be honest. It's not quite the sexy image of the people would be thinking of Olivia QT just looking all glamorous and whatnot. But that's the thing. We're all very much alike, and we're all human. So
it's so healing for people just to be able to let go of these stories they have about other people, and we're very similar to each other.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that you're sharing. I was so excited to hear your talk.
Right on. You got it.
All right. So, given the complexities of human intimacy of any kind, people who are trans also sometimes they have body dysphoria on top of that. Can you explain a little bit about that and share some thoughts on it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. This is perhaps one of the biggest points that we touch on in the workshop. Yeah. This is something that both Miss Haley and I want to make, very paramount in this. As when you're watching porn with trans people in it, it's often a something that you won't encounter. Mm-hmm. One thing you will have that I think you have to understand with every trans person is that their dysphoria can manifest in a multitude of ways. Mm-hmm. That could be, for example, say if they're a trans guy, it could be that perhaps they have, they've not had top surgery, or they might even be fine with not. Like for myself as a trans woman, I know some trans women have major bottom dysphoria. Mm-hmm. Myself, I don't so much, but it manifests in different ways. And what we really emphasize in this workshop is communication with this. Always checking that, is it okay if I touch you in this way and such like that? Because what's necessarily represented may not necessarily be interpreted as a positive sexual act given someone's dysphoria. So, for example, I used to date a partner who had terrible bottom dysphoria, and we actually used to do techniques so that we could be intimate in ways that we wouldn't be treating her genitals as as a penis, so we wouldn't be doing things like rubbing and such like that. We could actually uh, simulate things like tribbing, or we could even simulate me penetrating her by putting a Hitachi onto her genitals. Making sure she, like it was not as visible, so there's not that visual cue that sets off the dysphoria. And then I could basically just rub against it, and she would feel that pressure as well, without resorting to the typical sort of stroking motion that you often see portrayed. Although that said, there are some girls like myself, who do sometimes conform to those stereotypes, that we do enjoy some of those things. Like I myself do occasionally enjoy topping people, but it can really vary. It can really vary, right? So it's very much, I think this is the point we want to make the most paramount with this, is that just always ask, always keep in communication, and that's the most important.
That's so useful, because humans tend to see something once or twice, we tend to draw conclusions from that, and making it conscious and helping people be aware that, hey, this may not work for everyone it's a powerful share. And thank you so much for being vulnerable about that.
Well, no worries, my pleasure.
Yeah. So can you share, is this your first time being to ConvergeCon, or have you been before?
It is.
Yeah.
It is the first time. Yes. I'm actually. I'm quite excited. I'm not entirely sure what to expect, but it seems like subjects that I myself am quite interested in. Myself and Miss Haley, we presented this workshop just once before. We're planning on another time at another smaller venue, but I won't lie, I'm nervous.
It's a very warm crowd. It's like, and the organizers they do a really good job of helping people feel supported and cared about. So I think you'll really enjoy it. I've been to a lot of different conferences. This is one of my favorites, because it's really just the audience and the whole environment is very warm and friendly. So I'm excited. I can't wait to hear your talk, and I guess I'll see you in about a month.
Right on, absolutely. Right on.
Yeah. If you're watching this and you have questions or comments, please leave them below. I'll share them with Olivia Cutie, and we'll try to get back to you with any answers. So thank you so much for being here today, and I'll talk to you soon.
It's been a pleasure, my dear. Cheers.